Hey, Erin, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Well,
Good.
hey, I'm excited about this conversation because being a 25-year veteran in the CPG product space and being at Mars for 12 of those years, I'm very excited to really dive deep into your background and really understand where you came from. And so I'd love to start it off with, can you tell us your story? What was the way in the path you became to eventually become the general manager at Royal Canin?
Sounds good. Thanks, Ian. So, my path isn't necessarily a linear one. I have moved from sales, actually, where I started, to marketing and eventually to general management most recently, and had the opportunity to work across some incredible categories from basically stilettos to potato chips and snack bars and beauty, and most recently working across pet care, which is a first for me. So, I actually started on the sales floor, paying my way through college and worked my way up over 10 years and had the opportunity to work for brands like Gucci and Prada, first on the sales floor, then in management and buying. And I eventually decided that I needed to go back to school. I loved marketing. I couldn't get a job in marketing out of sales without a massive pay cut. So I went back to school and I started post MBA at a company called Frito-Lay, with an incredible group of people. It was a great kind of basis in CPG at the time with a very fast pace and great brands. I moved into L'Oreal afterwards. So I really missed some of the fashion and trend background from my luxury retail days. So moved to L'Oreal and had an opportunity to work for the company for 10 years, across every single category within their consumer division. And the last couple of years that I was there, I spent a lot of time on digital transformation, which was a big challenge for the company. We were, challenged to move quickly and learn a lot. And then also worked in acquisitions. And that's really what kind of caused a career pivot for me. I became incredibly interested in media. I thought I knew a little bit, but I wanted to learn more, and also very, very intrigued by founder-led companies. I was kind of fascinated by these models that worked differently than big CPG companies, and what you could learn from that. So I moved to a great media company called Mindshare afterwards, working across the Unilever portfolio. So I got to work across ice cream and a bunch of different categories, and then moved over to Kind, which had been one of the fastest growing brands within food, and really worked on some of the first advertising and media campaigns and got to work closely with the founder, which was great. From there, I decided to go back into beauty. I missed it. So I moved over to Coty and first worked across our luxury portfolio, again, working on brands like Gucci. I launched Gucci Beauty at Sephora, and then worked as the global CMO across CoverGirl and Sally Hansen. And in the past year, I've had the opportunity to work for Mars and to work for Royal Canin, which has been my first kind of entry into pet care, which I found was just a fascinating category. I have two pets. I'm a lover of pets, so it was great to have a chance to really learn. And what really attracted me was that Mars is an incredibly values-based company, which I'm sure you know from your background. And also, Royal Canin has just phenomenal products in a very different model. It's very advocacy based. We were actually created by a veterinarian. And so the opportunity to work with great products and with an advocacy model was really very intriguing.
Wow, great response, Erin. And at Google, I mean, we hear words like sustainability. I know it's a
Mhm.
huge initiative from the Google side, but from Mars and from Royal Canin's perspective, it's a big, broad topic, and we cover a lot of things from packaging to ingredients to emissions. How does Royal Canin Mars view sustainability, and how are you prioritizing where to take action?
Sure. So really good question. I think, in terms of our approach, it's very much a holistic approach. So we focus on a healthy planet, on thriving people, and on pet well-being. So from a healthy planet perspective, one of the focus areas is on sustainable sourcing. Today, 100% of our fish is sourced sustainably. We also have just launched a range of products that have algae oil, which is a sustainable source of DHA, but also looking to continue to build off of this in the future. We're, of course, reducing waste wherever we can across the supply chain. And then we've committed to have 100% of our packaging be recyclable, recoverable, or compostable by 2025. All of our cans are today, and we're building off of this as well. Second, when we look at the second biggest priority, it's thriving people. And here there's two initiatives that we're working on. One is a student support fund at Tuskegee. It's a veterinary college that really we think will help build more diversity within the veterinary community. So we kicked that off last year in partnership with Banfield. We also have a pet nutrition advisor program. So as we looked at vet technicians, we saw that one of the biggest gaps in curriculum is around nutrition, which is an area where obviously we're quite passionate. So it's an opportunity to really build a curriculum and close that gap. And then finally on pet well-being, we think there's a tremendous opportunity to educate on preventative care. We have a program called Take Your Cat to the Vet. It's an area where there's some of the biggest gaps in preventive care. So that's been a multi-year kind of commitment from as we use advertising dollars, in-store signage to make sure that we're promoting taking your cat to the vet. And then we also have a great program called Puppies for Parole. And this is a program where we essentially pair inmates with puppies at shelters who are in need of training. And so it's an opportunity for inmates to give back and also for puppies to be much more likely to be placed in a forever home because they've been trained. In terms of where we prioritize, there's a lot of things that we're focused on across the organization. I love that we have consistent KPIs across, embedded in every part of our organization. But two things that my team is working on is one, a partnership with the Pet Sustainability Coalition. This is a great organization that has incredible training resources. And so we've just kicked off a web series where they're educating our teams in terms of sustainability initiatives. The second is around, because we're an omni-channel team, very focused on e-commerce waste and how we can reduce that throughout the supply chain. So lots of work being done and definitely very focused on our mission here.
Amazing. Where does inclusivity fit within your team?
Great question. So in terms of inclusivity, we believe at Mars that in the world we want tomorrow, society is inclusive and it's diverse. One of the ways that this shows up is with our associates across our population of 130,000 people. Really, I think we want to make sure that our associates feel valued and they feel respected and that they can bring their authentic selves to work. So that's one of our biggest priorities. And then as we think of our strategy, there's 4 key areas of focus. One is ensuring that all of our leaders are really champions and accountable champions of I&D. And when I say accountable champions, it means we have KPIs that we're focused on across this and very committed to. The second is a culture that values the power of differences. And third is really harnessing those differences. So we firmly believe and we see that teams that have diversity of thought and approach absolutely are more powerful teams. So we're making sure that this is a core focus area for us. And then finally, it's making sure that we have policies and practices in place to support this and make it easier. So programs like unconscious bias programs where we're enabling our teams to do better and really be committed to improving and to change.
Amazing. And I know you said matrix. I mean, I know Mars is, everybody's looking at KPIs. Is that how you measure the progress of all of these initiatives?
I'd say it's very data driven, but also qualitative. So we want to make sure we have a single source of truth so that there's, clarity in terms of we know what we need to do now, how are we doing against it? But we look at data and analytics and measure against a scorecard, but we also have surveys with our teams to make sure that we're getting quantitative and qualitative feedback to measure change.
Outstanding. Well, let's go here. So millennials and Gen Z. I'm still trying to figure them all out, but what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of them?
So it's a very good question. Gen Z, my kids come to mind, frankly, and they're teaching me. But no, I think there's, really a lot of differences between the two and also within the generations. But very broadly speaking, Gen Z, I think of as being digitally native. Grew up with phones in hand, and really there's this very fluid movement from online to offline. And for millennials, I think of millennials as being very aspirational and very adaptive. And so, as we think of how that intersects with our category in pet care, there's some really interesting insights that we found. So millennials first really view their pet as family. And this is so unique because I think if you think of previous generations, a pet was, it really wasn't part of the family. So you invest differently, I think, in health and nutrition and services when you view a pet as family. They're willing to pay more for that. They're much more involved with services, insurance, veterinarians, and looking to them for advice. And really notably, we see that millennials value subscriptions more than any other generation too. So lots of opportunity to make sure that that process of really signing up for a subscription is a good one that adds value beyond just price promotion. For Gen Z, what we see is they don't trust necessarily marketers or brands. They trust people, and they look for sources online and offline. And so, as we think of pet professionals in particular, where we have a lot of partnerships, a millennial consumer is much more likely to rely on the vet, where we see that Gen Z relies on a vet, a breeder, a groomer, a dog walker, the people that they see at the park. So really multiple different sources of information, less so a brand giving them, the information. So really there we're focused on how do we make sure that we're influencing with advocates who are proponents of our brand in a way that intersects with where Gen Z is really, looking for that information.
Excellent. And do you find them a more loyal customer base? And what programs and initiatives are important to them?
Yeah, we are very, very lucky. We have among the highest loyalty rates I've seen across generations. So I actually asked my team to show me the numbers over and over and over again because I didn't believe it at first. But I think there's two things that really drive a very high degree of loyalty across generations for the brand. So the first one is products that are really, they're science-based, they're customized with a focus on nutrition and health. And so, our consumers see that products work. And I think that's the biggest driver of loyalty. And for us, it's really about compliance because we know that a pet who gets the products more frequently or continuously is going to be a healthier pet. So, building that compliance with products that work very effectively is really key. The other area where we see a lot of where we see loyalty really being built is across that intersection with pet professionals. Because we were created by a vet, because it's been, the interaction with vets in the vet community and beyond that, breeders and groomers has been part of our DNA since the very beginning. That's an area where we definitely see consumers looking for advice and those pet professionals advocating for our brand and driving loyalty.
Amazing. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about search trends. So at Google, and hey, we invented the search, right? We're seeing search trends over 60% in topics like pet food. Is it organic? Where are the ingredients sourced? Are you guys looking for trends with regard to specific genres to understand what they're thinking that is important?
Absolutely. So what we really look at, we absolutely look at search trends and find it fascinating to see how they evolve over time. And where we see an intersection of search trends and our philosophy and point of view is where we really spend the most time, particularly on building out education and content, less product-based because it's very nutrition-based, but really looking at education and content. So one of the areas that we find really interesting as we look at search content is that signaling of the change between a healthy and a sick pet. I talked a little bit about cats earlier, and we know that less than 50% of cats regularly go to a vet, and which is a challenge to begin with. But when you compound that with the fact that cats are incredibly good at actually hiding symptoms, what we find through search trends and also from veterinarians and other feedback is that often cats don't get care until they're at a critical stage. And so a focus for us is, how can you actually use some of those signals through search and elsewhere to help to encourage, getting a cat to a vet much earlier to have preventive care instead. One of the other things that we see from search data is that finding the right food is really confusing. There's been a lot of innovation within pet care. We know that the science category, which we're in, has grown. There's fresh food that's growing, et cetera. A lot of different messaging. So we've seen through search trends and also through the pet professionals that we work with that this is a particular area of concern in the ecosystem. So here we're really focused on, how do you develop tools that can help to simplify that process? So we've developed a digital tool and an in-store tool that's a food finder that really kind of simplifies the navigation of that process.
Amazing. Well, Erin, you have laid out an amazing career, and as a mentor, what advice would you give people who are in high school, coming up, going to college, and starting their careers? And what, if anything, you could go back in time and actually say, I wish I knew, what I know now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. And I think that the first thing is just to kind of find what engages you and drives you, and to navigate your path, like embedding that throughout the process. Because I think, there's a myth sometimes, and I certainly believe this when I was first starting out in marketing, that the way you progress and get ahead is through working on the biggest brands and working with the biggest budgets. And so, I think there was a bias earlier in my career to make sure that I was doing that. And I, over time, I was lucky that I was able to progress, but I got to kind of a pivotal point in my career where I looked back and it wasn't as satisfied as I thought I would be. I worked hard. I was proud of what I'd done, but it just, I didn't have the feeling that I expected at that point. And as I, became more thoughtful and started to look back, what I found is that the things that really kind of engaged me were when, one, I was driving change, when I was working with a team and you had that sense of camaraderie of a team that's trying to get something done that's challenging, when I was learning, and often when I didn't know what I was doing and was kind of faced with that challenge of like, figure it out, sink or swim, and get it done. I found that as a really great way to actually kind of learn and evolve. So it'll be different for everybody, but I think if you can kind of think through those things that really engage you and embed that in your path, it's incredibly beneficial. That's what really, shifted me at a certain point in time to pivot into media and founder-led brands, and it kind of this rapid pace change that I think built more of a diversity to my background, and more importantly, just really engaged me and made me quite happy with what I was doing. The second area of advice that I'd say is just, be curious and be focused on continuing to learn. So, I think it's risky when you get to a point where you feel like you know everything, and it's not good for you. It's not good for your team. So, I try to put myself in situations where I don't know and I have to figure it out. I also think, that curiosity that you have in the first 3 or 6 months when you join a company, and, everything's firing and you're trying to figure it out, I think is just invaluable. So capturing that, either for yourself, if you're the person in that role, or for your team, and making sure that you really kind of capture their insights, builds a more diverse and a more powerful team. One of the things that I found when I joined Mars and Royal Canin in particular was that, they gave us the first 90 days just to onboard. And it was almost unsettling in the beginning because, I felt like I needed to be doing so much. And I had a chance to take weeks of nutritional training, to really understand the brand, to have access to global leaders, to really learn. And at the end of the 90 days, I got to present out to our leadership team, what did I learn through that process? And I've also done the same with my newer team members. And that's where I think we really continue to kind of evolve and be agile and stay sharper, and definitely very invaluable for me.
Excellent. Wow, Erin, I think we got 1 minute for questions. Is there any questions in the chat that came through? Let's see. All positive things around. That's such an inspiring leader at Royal Canaan. You're just getting praises, Erin. So
that's so nice.
Yeah, well done. It was a pleasure to share the stage with you today. And if everybody, I'm a dog and cat lover. I own both, and I love Royal Canaan. I always have. So if you haven't tried the product, please go ahead. It's the best in the business. So
thank you, Ian. Appreciate it.